Welcome to the Lancaster School District Board of Trustees meeting for October 19th. We are reconvening from closed session at 6:05 p.m. and will report that there was no action taken in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957.1. Now, if you'll all stand and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And we'll move right into our most waited for enrollment report.
Good evening, board members. Can you hear me? There. So for today, we have a total of TK through 8th grade students, 13,817. For ECE students, we have 528 for a total of 14,345. This is a gain of 31 from our last board report and a gain of 194 from the same time last year. So that's good news. I'm sorry, what did you say? The change from the last meeting was a gain of 31 and a gain of 194 for the same time last year.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wynn. The other informational item that's on the agenda this evening that I wanted to just bring to the board's attention and share is a recognition that one of our schools received, Fulton and Alsbury, and there is an article that's attached there that we're very excited and proud of that shows that they were named by U.S. News World Report as one of the outstanding schools in the U.S. So we're very excited about that recognition. It says all rankings number 149 in California middle schools and number 10 in California magnet middle schools. So congratulations to Fulton and Alsbury and to the entire staff there for the hard work and to all of our students at Fulton and Alsbury. So it truly does take a village. And in this case, it takes a full Academy of Arts and Engineering individuals that are committed to just doing fabulous things over there. So thank you.
Fantastic. And I'll let you proceed if you'd like to the consideration.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll speak closer.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda this evening under information is consideration of a first amendment resolution. And this is information that was shared with me by Mr. Giles. And I have attached a copy here for the board's review and discussion. And if there is anything that the board would like to do at this time or in the future, just please let me know, give me direction. I'll be happy to bring it back for further discussion. Hopefully you have all had an opportunity to review it. And Mr. Giles, I don't know if you have any words that you'd like to add.
Well, I just brought it forward because I don't want our community to feel like we're going to label them domestic terrorists if they have some concerns about their parents the parents have concerns about their children or staff has concerns about conditions or whatever. I want people to still be able to freely voice their concerns at our board meetings without them feeling like we're going to turn them over as domestic terrorists. So that's why I brought it forward. Even though we don't seem to have that, who knows? As things go on, I just thought I'd just do a preemptive strike if needed.
Right.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay. Any other comments?
I would support a similar resolution.
Okay. One thing that I will just add, again, to piggyback on what Mr. Giles has said, we are very fortunate that while we have had community members come to our board meetings and express concerns and make comments. It has worked out very well in that everyone has done so on both sides of any issue to do it in a very respectful manner. And we're very fortunate that we've not had some of the concerns that maybe other boards have and communities have had. So we have this. We know that this information has been shared. So if at any time we feel that we need to revisit this, just please, as I said, let me know. That concludes the items on consideration of a First Amendment resolution. We do have one other informational item. If I can continue to forge ahead.
You sure may.
Thank you so very much. The other informational item that we have to share with you this evening is in reference to an update from Julie Usler. Is Julie in the audience? There she is. And it has to do with our transportation agency, Antelope Valley Student or Schools Transportation Agency. And there's some information that has been provided to the board, but Julie's going to give us the Reader's Digest version of some things that are going on over at ABSTA.
I am very quickly. We just had a meeting with the folks over at AB Schools Transportation Agency on Friday and discussed that they are ready to kick off the Smart Tag program. And I know we brought this to you, but it's been about 18 months now. It was right before we went off, and they thought they might be able to bring it back as soon as transportation started up again, but they've waited. But November 1st, they're going to start sending out the paperwork to the schools and send out paperwork to parents. The way it's going to happen is, and just as a reminder, the Smart Tag system is a system that is a computerized software program, and it gives each of the students a tag like this that actually has a lot of wires and things inside of it. And so what they do is they tag in when they get on the bus. What that allows the transportation agency and even us to do is see exactly which kids are on the bus, where they're at, what stop they got on. In the afternoon, we can see what stop they got off. It tells us, it timestamps it. So we actually can track and keep track of our children. And that is a huge improvement. And I guess it's been a huge undertaking for the transportation agency. So they're ready to go. They have everything set up. The students that are currently riding the buses, whether they're special ed or regular education, will fill out a form. The bus driver will give them that form, and that will get them set up to get their tag. So they told us that would start November 1st, and they hope to have all of the tags distributed so that they're ready to go by the first of the year. So very exciting news. Yes.
So is that a voluntary program for the parents to opt in, or how does that?
No, it's not. They have to have this. It'll be their bus pass, and they can keep it from kindergarten all the way through high school. The same path if they're able to hold on to it. So yeah, the transportation agency graciously is allowing our kids, the elementary school kids, to be able to replace their pass without charge. So that's a wonderful thing, because I know there will be some that are lost. But no, it's their bus pass. And so they will have this as their bus pass. They're getting ready also to launch a parent portal. It's not up and running yet, but it should be. They said hopefully by the time they actually get the passes out, so the parents can track where their kids are as well.
Good, thank you.
It's a good thing.
As long as you explain to them they can't trade passes on the bus.
They may not. No. Okay, any other questions? And I'll keep you informed as we get going with this, how it's going. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our informational items this evening, and there are no presentations.
Very good. Then we'll move to addressing the board. Board members will be utilizing electronic devices during this meeting to access the online agenda. And an electronic device may be used to record this meeting. Individuals who wish to address the board may complete a speaker card and present it to the superintendent's secretary. The board president will recognize individuals who wish to speak. Individuals wishing to present testimony to the board concerning specific items on the agenda may do so once the item has been moved, seconded, and is on the floor for discussion. Time limits of 3 minutes per person, 20 minutes per item shall be allowed. Board members may ask questions for clarification purposes. However, no action may be taken and no questions or no discussion may take place on an item not on the posted agenda. That is per the Brown Act. So we will go to comments from PTA,
We have no comments this evening.
from CSEA,
I have no request for CSEA speakers.
and the third would be from our teachers union.
I do have a comment that I will read on behalf of Gina Whipple, president of CAL. Good evening, everyone. As I have stated previously, I will continue to attend meetings virtually. I will be here for this meeting and the community forum. While we look forward to collaborating with Krista on the implementation of standards-based grading, please keep in mind that we are exhausted and now isn't the best time to require additional responsibilities. We are all working to provide a safe and positive environment for students. As much as we are looking to support our students and their social emotional well-being, we need the latitude to manage hours as well. Lastly, I hope to see you all at our next yoga event. Have a fabulous evening and feel free to contact me, Gina Whipple, CAL President. Yoga. She's actually the CVT health coordinator for the district and has been responsible for coordinating some yoga events. I don't have all the details, but I'll make sure that I get the details and we will send it to you. Well, you look like you're yoga ready, Mr. John. No, it's yoga. You're welcome.
Thank you. We'll move on then to number 12.
Actually, I'm sorry, we do have comments from the audience.
Oh, yes.
We don't want to forget that.
No,
And our
definitely don't want to forget the audience because
No,
they're our
we don't.
most important people.
we
Please.
don't. Our first speaker will be Mickey Martinez.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Mickey Martinez, a teacher for Lancaster School District. I addressed the board at our last school board meeting in regards to state mandated testing requirements of unvaccinated staff members, as well as those employees who choose not to disclose their personal vaccination status with our district. I want to remind you once again that these mandates are not laws. You, as a board, can choose not to comply. In recent events, two school district boards in California, Happy Valley Union as well as Lucerne Valley Unified School District, have both voted against COVID-19 mandates. That is proof it is possible for our school district to not comply with these mandates. LVUSD's position cites several key points, including the trustees' belief in parental choice, the lack of legal authority to mandate COVID-19 vaccines, the virus's low risk to school-age children, the constitutional protection for people to deny unwanted medical treatment, scientific studies indicating that people who have recovered from COVID-19 have more durable and long-lasting immunity to COVID-19 than individuals with vaccine-induced immunity, and the California constitutional guarantee to a free public education. By enforcing these state mandates, testing requirements, you as a board are complicit in not only to our constitutional rights being trampled on, but our agreement between Lancaster School District and the Teachers Association of Lancaster dated July 1st, 2019 to June 3rd, 30th, 2020 is being broken. Page 6, Article 2, Non-Discrimination 1.0. Neither the district nor the association shall illegally discriminate against any union member by covered in this agreement on the basis of race, color, creed, sex, sexual orientation, national origin, political affiliation, marital status, physical handicap, or domicile. My firmly held religious and personal belief is against taking the COVID-19 vaccination. Because of my personal and religious belief, under threat, duress, and coercion, I am being discriminated against by having to test for COVID weekly. If the purpose of the district is to test employees to catch someone who is asymptomatic, then they should be testing all employees, since it is a fact you can still contract and spread COVID even when fully vaccinated. All employees, since the district is not testing every employee weekly regardless of vaccination status, this is discrimination against me and the other unvaccinated employees, and those that have declined to state their personal vaccination status. If we don't take a stand against these tyrannical mandates now, when they are more egregious and staff and students are required to fully vaccinate in order to remain on campus, our district will crumble. On Monday, October 18th, parents and students throughout our state took a stance against these mandates and kept their kids home from school, and in many areas held rallies and protests. That shows me that parents are willing to pull their children out of schools rather than have their child continue in a district complicit to these mandates. Lancaster School District Board of Trustees, I beg you to reconsider your position on these mandates and really put your staff and students first. By taking a stance against these mandates, many students will leave their home districts and come to a district willing to put kids first and take a stance against tyranny. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Keith Boyette. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Eudora Fields Gothigan.
Good evening, board members and district staff people. I have been a classified employee for 7 years with the district, 15 years as a certificated teacher. So it makes me 22 years with Lancaster School District. I come to speak as an unvaccinated employee who the very first week of when we were to have our weekly testing, my confidentiality was broken and it went out to everybody at my school that wasn't vaccinated or if they hadn't turned in their information. So I was pretty upset by that. I was apologized to, but it still was something that really upset me. And I got a message from Ed Services today, and I just want to quote this, recovery from the pandemic and a year and a half of distance learning will make more than this year. We are still losing instructional time this year due to quarantines, lack of substitutes, and the need to focus on social emotional learning in these first few months. Unquote. As I read this message today, my heart sank at the knowledge that teachers and staff who are choosing to be unvaccinated have to be subjected to another layer of frustration and mental exhaustion of looking at our jobs being in jeopardy. No one should have to be told to make a decision that goes against our moral, religious, or otherwise choice for our bodies. I also have heard that districts have denied medical and religious exemptions. Shame on them. Children and adults and students have had that right, and now to take that away is unconstitutional, to say at the least. I have also seen that there are districts that are taking a stand behind their employees and their children and not bowing down to this mandate. I ask the board members and district officials to join the districts and take a stand for your employees and students. We have been through this pandemic for the students, the families, and for all of you. We need you to be here for us. One day, it may be something that you want to say no to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Barbara Long.
Thank you very much. Hello, board members. I haven't seen you guys in a while. Thank you for allowing me to address you tonight. There are so many topics to choose from, but I've picked two, the vaccine mandates and the sex ed curriculum if time allows. Starting with the vaccine mandate, I'll be quoting Rob McCoy, who has been on the front lines fighting for our freedom since the beginning of COVID. He reports as of last Friday, the CDC released data showed between the dates of December 14th, 2020 and October 8th of 2021, a total of 798,636 adverse events following the COVID vaccines were reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, known as VARS. It's also known that 90% of the cases go unreported due to the overwhelming paperwork involved. The data included 16,766 deaths. That's an increase of 456 from the previous week. There are 117,399 reports of serious injuries, including death, during the same period, up 5,478 compared to the previous week. About the 12 and 17-year-olds, U.S. data revealed 21,652 total adverse events, including 1,304 counted as serious, and 24 reported deaths. Most recent involves a 15-year-old boy who died 6 days after receiving the Pfizer vaccine. He died of a blood clot. Another death included a 16-year-old girl who complained of fatigue and died 1 day after getting the Pfizer vaccine. There are 57 reports of the anaphylaxis and 529 cases of myocarditis and pericarditis, inflammation of the heart. For the sake of time, I won't state all the other adverse reactions. For kids this age group, there is a 99.7% survival rate without the vaccine. Why are we being subjected to following the governor's mandates when he himself does not? He even admitted his teenage daughter has not been vaccinated. One more thing about this, compared to last year, there are 20,300 more deaths from COVID as of October 17th. That's with social distancing, vaccines, and these ridiculous masks. Onto the sex ed curriculum. This is mind-blowing. I know some of you on the board are close to my age, back when school taught the truth about genders, male and female, period. The curriculum is full of some very good educational information, but sprinkled throughout with this gender identification, which is causing more gender confusion amongst kids. I checked out all the links where the curriculum came from. It's an agenda. Instead of teaching biological facts that biology books teach, the school system has caved to the culture and feelings identity instead of facts. I remember having all kinds of feelings growing up. Gender is determined at conception. XX is a female, YX or XY is a male. The father carries a gender in his sperm, and even though the gender of the child has already been determined at conception, it can be visually seen as early as 7 weeks gestation via ultrasound. It is not assigned at birth, nor is it something that biologically changes because someone feels a certain way. Thank you for listening. I hope something gets done about this.
Thank you very much. And I have a statement to read from Laura Giles, who also sent in a comment. Yes. Oh, Mr. Wynn, your microphone, I don't know. I'm sorry, the board president, Mr. Wynn, has asked that all members of the audience have their mask on and that they're wearing it properly, please. Ma'am, in the front seat. Do you have a shield on now? Oh, I'm sorry. I could not see that with the glare here. Okay. That's why I was asking.
Sorry, I couldn't see it either, so.
We have the, okay.
Okay.
They put the little decals on there.
Well, it works very well because you can't tell that you have it on. Thank you very much.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So we have one more statement to read from Laura Giles, and it reads as follows. Dear Lancaster School District Superintendent, Board of Trustees, and leadership team, good evening. Tonight, I would like to address three subjects: mask choice, quarantining of healthy students, and the Healthy Children's Resolution. In an article entitled The Science of Masking Kids at School Remains Uncertain by David Zewick, mask wearing, and I quote, mask wearing among children is generally considered a low-risk mitigation strategy. However, the negatives are not zero, especially for young children, end quote, said Lloyd Fisher, the president of the Massachusetts chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Quote, it is important for children to see facial expressions of their peers and the adults around them in order to learn social cues and understand how to read emotions. End quote. COVID, of course, is also a disease that tends to have much milder effects on children. We know that the risk to kids from COVID is vanishingly low. Yes, we're seeing it, but it's rare, said, that was a quote from Schechter Perkins, the emergency medicine infectious disease expert. Out of more than 600,000 American deaths attributed to COVID-19, 361 were for kids and adolescents under age 18. In the much shorter 2018-19 flu season, there were 477 pediatric deaths. We didn't have mask mandates then, says Schechter Perkins noted. And now we're in a post-vax world where adults have had the opportunity to protect themselves, and vaccines prevent severe COVID. In an article entitled CDC, Schools with Mask Mandates, didn't see statistically significant different rates of COVID transmission from schools with optical policies by John Miltimore. The study, which analyzed some 90,000 elementary students in 169 Georgia schools from November 16 to December 11, found that there was no statistically significant difference in schools that required students to wear masks compared to schools where masks were optional. It was noted by board member Grooms at the last board meeting that mask wearing has become politicized. I agree. The same article states, masks are no longer simply a matter of individual or public health. Bear in mind, children face a low risk of falling sick or being hospitalized with COVID. With or without a face mask, small children are far more likely to die of the flu, a car accident, a swimming pool, cancer, or some other ailment than COVID-19, CDC data shows. The battle of school mask mandates has now become a political conflict, part of a larger struggle between the individual and collectivism. In another article entitled The Downsides of Masking Young Students Are Real by Vinny Prasad, scientists have an obligation to strive for honesty. And on the question of whether kids should wear masks in schools, particular preschools and elementary schools, here's what I can conclude. The potential educational harms of mandatory masking policies are much more firmly established, at least at this point, than their possible benefits in stopping the spread of COVID-19 in schools. For most able-bodied adults, masks in public indoor settings pose only minor inconveniences. But children who, even amid the worrisome Delta variant surge, or experiencing serious outcomes from COVID-19 as far lower rates than people in older age groups have different needs and vulnerabilities than adults. I agree that mask wearing of children in schools should be a parental choice, not a mandate. I would like to briefly address the policy of outdoor masking. We were told that masks would not be required outdoors. Since then, I have discovered that this is not the case. My children have come home telling me that a duty aide was telling them to put their mask on while at recess outdoors. I inquired of the principal and was told that it was the site policy that because the kids were in a line, they were required to wear their mask because they are close to each other and interacting in close proximity. I accepted this explanation. I don't agree, but I accepted it. Then 3 days later, a video was posted on Class Dojo of a dance party outside with kids and staff in close proximity without masks, but students and staff, both students and staff. I enjoyed seeing the video and the joy on everyone's faces, but it occurs to me, how exactly is this different than standing in a line? Can we please be reasonable and agree that research and guidelines do not support mask wearing outside at any time? Let the kids play at recess without wearing masks. Now I will address the quarantining of healthy children. In an article entitled Quarantined LA School Kids Have Lower COVID Rates Than Vaccinated Teachers by Matt Welch. As the CDC lays out in its school recommendations, students proportionally are not the ones spreading COVID inside school buildings. Staff-to-staff transmission is more common than transmission from students to staff, staff to students, or student to student. The agency noted findings from several studies suggest that SARS-CoV to transmission among students is relatively rare. The baseline rate of infection taken from 2 weeks before school was 0.8% for students, 0.6% for staff. From that low starting point, it has interestedly down, as have pediatric hospitalizations and overall community spread. A study released on September 16th by Los Angeles County contains two remarkable findings. One, students, most of whom are not vaccinated, have a lower positive rate than teachers and staff, most of whom are. And two, the positive test rate among students who are quarantined because of classmates tested positive in a microscope, 0.2%. In an article entitled Small Quarantines Keep Too Many Kids at Home with Barely Any Effect on COVID by Jeffrey Regalis and Monica Gandhi, a single case in school can lead to dozens of children being sent home, and in large districts, thousands of kids can be sent home in given a week. The risk of quarantine in a given situation must be outweighed by the risk of contracting the virus. But in many cases, quarantines are probably doing more harm than good, given the well-documented cost, intellectual and social, of keeping children out of school and the low rates of transmission of the coronavirus within schools. We now have clear and reproducible outcomes across the country showing what secondary spread in schools looks like. Large population-based studies in Wisconsin, North Carolina, Utah, in New York City have demonstrated secondary transmission rates of less than 1% in school classroom and bus settings. Even more importantly, for our arguments, a mere 0.2% of LA students sent home to quarantine tested positive for the coronavirus. When students do get infected, it tends to be from outside school. Keeping thousands of kids out of school to prevent a handful of coronavirus cases is unjustifiable. I urge you to approve a Healthy Children's Resolution. Join Newhall, Orange, El Dorado, and many other school districts in adopting a resolution that does not risk loss of funding, but addresses the concerns of masking mandates and quarantine policies with no off-ramping of COVID restrictions. Since then, I have discovered that, okay, let me just make sure that it was copied correctly. Okay, since then, I have discovered that this is not the case. My children have come home telling me that a duty aide was telling them to put their mask on while at recess outdoors. I inquired of the principal. Okay, I was going to say.
She was not feeling well when she sent that in, so it could have got screwed up in the translation.
Okay, no worries. It looks like this page is a repeat of what I just read. So the last statement was, I urge you to approve a Healthy Children's Resolution. Join Newhall, Orange, El Dorado, and many other school districts in adopting a resolution that does not risk loss of funding, but addresses the concerns of masking mandates and quarantine policies with no off-ramping of COVID restrictions. Thank you, Laura Giles. And that completes the comments from the audience. And I'm sorry, for the record, there are all of the articles that were referenced. I've been provided a copy, so I will be sharing those with all board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bowers. We move to individual action items for the superintendent. Item number 12. Need a motion for the adoption of Resolution 2021-22:8, request for the California Department of Public Health for the revision of face covering guidance for schools and school-based programs.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Keith Giles, second by Greg Tepe. Is there any discussion?
Well, we asked for some revisions and we asked for some guidance, and this is what Dr. Bowers helped us set up. So that's why it's brought back. Thank you for your consideration.
I just want to say I like the wording of the resolution and appreciate that. I just want to say I like the wording of the resolution and I appreciate the input from parents and staff tonight.
I'd like to make note that I have received emails from staff members who have concerns if children are not wearing masks because they still have the ability to pass the virus. While children don't seem to be getting it as badly as adults, when the reverse was true and polio was the pandemic, then we certainly did everything we could to protect our children. And I think we owe it to our staff and our community as well. And that the mask wearing is one of several layers of protection. We don't know which one works better or not, but the direction that I'm hearing from California State Department of Public Health, the CDC, outweighs articles by individual journalists in my book at this time. That doesn't mean that won't change in the near future, but right now I don't have any statistics that are overwhelmingly telling me that our staff is protected as thoroughly without the mask. So on that behalf, I'm going to vote against it.
We're not having the vote yet, but it does address staff in this resolution.
I understand that it addresses staff, but to me, it does not protect staff in the same manner that we are protecting children.
All this is to send forward to our elected leaders to just suggest that they look at some of the research. This isn't going to change anything. It's basically to get the ball rolling.
Is there any other comments or discussion? Audience, you're welcome to join in if you'd like.
Mrs. Long is requesting to know what the resolution is.
This resolution is a request to the California Department of Public Health, the CDPH, for the revision of face covering guidance for schools and school-based programs. And I'll read it if you'd like. Whereas the Lancaster School District, serving over 14,000 students Los Angeles County has remained dedicated to operating schools and school-based programs safely amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, while following all Los Angeles County DPH and California DPH orders and guidance. Whereas California schools and school districts are required to comply with orders and guidance issued by the Department of Public Health. Whereas Lancaster School District has closely managed all COVID-19 reported cases among students and staff, has a very limited rate of transmission on campuses per the LA County Department of Public Health TK through 12 COVID-19 data dashboard. And whereas Lancaster School District advocates for equitable access for all students to a high-quality public education system that promotes and values an inclusive, safe, and supportive environment. And whereas California has been severely impacted in both economic and education sectors by the state shutdown to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas current infection rates have dramatically fallen, along with COVID-19 deaths, with an increasing number of individuals being vaccinated, and through intentional efforts to institute a layered safety approach to slow the spread of COVID-19. And whereas according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, school-age children are less likely to contract and transmit COVID-19 and are less likely to have serious outcomes when compared to older populations. And whereas face coverings disproportionately impact children who are learning English as a second language, early elementary students who are still learning proper pronunciation and grammar, and those with speech and hearing disabilities or that may benefit from seeing facial expressions. Whereas it is the responsibility of each district to provide a welcoming, healthy, and safe school community for all students and staff to thrive. And to that end, some families, students, and staff have expressed a strong desire for face coverings to be optional. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the governing board of the Lancaster School District requests that the CDPH provide new face covering guidance for schools and school-based programs, giving students, staff, and families choice. And therefore, be it resolved that the superintendent of the Lancaster School District is directed to transmit this resolution to the Governor Newsom, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Director and State Public Health Officers, California Health and Human Services, Cal OSHA, LA County Board of Supervisors, Senator Scott Welk, Assemblyman Tom Lackey, and the LA County Board of Education to make known the interests of some district families, students, and staff regarding face covering guidance for the schools and school-based programs. This foregoing resolution, is waiting to be for a vote. Did that help? Yes, sir.
At the microphone, please, so I can hear you.
Yeah, without getting into the face mask debate, I agree. I think it should be optional. Those who are afraid of catching something should be able to wear their mask. Those who want to be able to breathe freely and not take a chance on getting COVID pneumonia from the bacteria that resides in these masks, I think they should be able to speak freely. And I agree with the speech and the voicing and what the kids need to see, facial expression. That's exactly the truth. What lady over there said is all truth, and I agree with it. So absolutely, if somebody's afraid and they want to wear the mask, they should be allowed to wear it, but you shouldn't have to force this on any of the teachers or the students. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so I totally agree with the resolution. It actually should be choice. The suicide rates have went up. It does matter that they cannot see facial expressions. It has caused a higher depression in your students. And to top it off, you say it actually is for their health benefit, but you have not addressed that the bacterial infections in their lungs, in their gums, and everything else that come from the mask because they cannot breathe freely. You're not protecting them from that. And that's just as deadly and just as painful. I know an 18-year-old girl that actually had to wear her mask because of the mandate, and she actually developed pleurisy. So she still could not work. She still could not go to school because she still ended up being hospitalized. Everybody should be able to make that choice. There are risks either way, but the numbers are low when it comes to COVID. And I would truly appreciate it if this board would actually take that into consideration. And that it's not the only risk that's out there.
Mr. Nguyen, you have one more speaker.
I just wanted to touch on the masks again. I teach 5th grade, and there's not a day gone by so far that a student hasn't gone to the nurse without a bloody nose. They get bloody noses every day. One day I sent 3 kids, and I do blame the masks. Today, again, another one. Another thing is kids, we're in an impoverished community at times, and some kids come with things that are dirty. They barely have clothes, and some kids have masks that they're coming that are dirty. So we're constantly we do provide it to them, of course, but that's just not okay that we're, expecting these kids to breathe in things that just not okay. So my big point was the bloody noses, though. Thank you.
Well, the reason I brought this resolution is I do have kids in the district, so that's why I feel like, parents should have a choice, staff should have a choice. But one of those articles that are mentioned in the letter, and I've seen all those articles, is one of them is the vanishing low secondary transmission rate in our school system. It's like 0.2%, I believe. Basically that's, it's almost nil. So I'm just looking to be able to push this forward to our officials so that maybe we can get some lax or at least some off-ramping, of some of these recommendations, because my kids are suffering. I know other people suffering. There's people that, lots of staff that are suffering. So just options is what we're looking for. And that's why we have the resolution. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
According to the local Los Angeles County, I believe it is 0.2 or 2.7 or right in that per 100,000. And we have a population of 11 million in the county. So we do have to expand that percentage. I agree. We are very, very fortunate as a county that it is far lower than in many other places. And I'd like to keep it that way until we have a little bit more clearance.
Yeah, come right up to the microphone there.
Okay, I just wanted to touch bases on the mask from actually a health clerk standpoint. I've been with the district 18 years, done health clerk. I have seen a ton more bloody noses. Again, the dirty masks, and that they're going to catch more with a dirty mask. We do provide them. I provide as much as I can if I catch them at the gate, but I'm only one person that can do that. My staff actually backs that up. But I had another concern as far as the one on the playground. I had a little girl who had a lanyard, went to jump off the swing. The lanyard got caught and she got cut completely around her neck. And that's why the safety of it is that really concerns me more than the actual effectiveness of wearing the mask.
We've got one more person.
Can I clean it up? Okay. I graduated from Loma Linda University 52 years ago, but prior to that, it was a microbiology major. So it's kind of been a hobby of mine to study epidemiology, and I knew this epidemic was going to come. It was just a matter of time and right out of China, and it did. My concern is when the AIDS epidemic came, we had to adopt universal precautions. And I had to go to a class and learn how to autoclave. I mean, I already knew how to autoclave, but I had to clean everything, and none of that is being done. A mask lasts 20 minutes. And a study done at Duke University only studied one sneeze. So I wear it because it's a visual thing saying I respect you and you respect me. But I'd like to see more hand washing. And if the teachers are concerned, the best thing they can do is wash their hands, use antimicrobial, which I know they do. And the kids, at least in my daughter's class, they wash their hands the minute they get there. So I'd like to see more emphasis on that than the mask wearing, but I don't know. I think we're up against politics. So thank you. And I did like the wording of the resolution. It was good.
I'm sorry, is there anyone else that would like to speak? Thank you. With that, we have a motion by Mr. Giles, a second by Mr. Teepee. I'm going to ask for a vote individually. And we'll start with Ms. Grooms.
Nay.
Mr. Giles.
Aye.
Mr. Teepee.
Aye.
And Mr. Nguyen, without any reservations, I'm going to vote no.
Thank you very much. Item 12A, adoption of resolution 2021-22:8. Request to the California Department of Public Health for the revision of face covering guidance for schools and school-based programs, with a motion by Mr. Giles, a second by Mr. Teepee. Dies with a vote of 2 nays and 2 vote yes. So this action item does not pass.
Thank you. We'll move on to number 13. Individual action item from Human Resources. The approval of appointment of Principal
Tim Hunter.
Kim Hunter.
Timothy Hunter.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Giles,
Second.
second by Ms. Grooms. For any comment?
Yes, it is the district's extreme pleasure to bring before you tonight the opportunity to appoint Timothy Hunter as the next principal in the Lancaster School District. He's faithfully served our district for the past 25 years as a resource teacher, an SDC teacher. He's served as an MTSS, multi-tiered system of support and inclusion. teacher on special assignment. He's for the last 5 years served as an assistant principal, both at the elementary and middle school levels. He is very qualified for the position. And when people talk about Tim, they say things like a teacher leader, a reflective practitioner, a collaborator, and a consensus builder. And those are my words. But no doubt others agree with me. So it's my pleasure to present Tim for your consideration this evening.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No. Vote is 4-0.
Congratulations to Timothy Hunter. Tim, stand up. I believe he wants to introduce us to someone, some special people. I'm sorry, Mr. Hunter, so that Mrs. Grooms can hear everything that you say. Would you mind going to the podium for us really quickly? Thank you so very much. And family, you may join him over there. Feel free.
They were trying to get out of it. I can't believe it. I have with me my lovely and beautiful wife, Christine, and my amazing little girl, Bailey. And virtually, my son, Nathaniel, is also watching, my daughter, Hannah, my daughter, Sarah. And I just really wanted to take an opportunity to thank all the amazing mentors that I've had, some of whom are in this room tonight. And I'm very eager and excited to begin working with Robert and really growing this school into it's got great potential for a lot of our students. And I'm very eager to get started with that. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tim, and congratulations. And thank you, family. It's great to meet you. And even the ones out there virtually. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. We'll move on to item 14, consent agenda items of the superintendents, items 14A through 14L, and ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Teepee, second by Ms. Grooms. Are there any comments? Well, I'll make a couple of comments, and that is for the Tim Hayes Financial for the donation of $100 worth of gift cards from Starbucks. Also, OPSEC Security for the donation of Starbucks, and the Amazon gift cards from Keenan and Associates. Additionally, Kaiser Permanente provided a grant to the district. It is School Psychology Month, Homeless Youth Awareness Month, and I'm just going to throw this out. Michelle, could we have a number of the homeless youth we believe are in this district?
I do not have the hard number because it changes every day, but I can tell you that on average, we serve about 4 to 5% homeless and 4 to 5% foster youth in our district.
So that would be the 4% of the 14,000?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Vote passes 4-0. Moving on to consent agenda business, 15A to 15F.
So moved.
A motion.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Giles,
Second.
second by Mr. Teepee. Are there any conversations required or discussion? Quite a list of fundraisers. And for any business owners who want to get on that list, please get directly involved with Dr. Bowers, and we'll have you added to the list. With that, no conversation, no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Vote passes 4-0. 16, the agenda or educational services consent agenda items, 16A through 16M. Do I hear any discussion, comments?
So moved.
Second.
Keith Giles motion and Diane Groom second.
No.
Any comment?
Those are all really good programs.
Very good. Then we will ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 4-0. Consent agenda items for human resources. Approval of personnel actions. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. TP,
Second.
second by Diane Grooms. Lexi, are we seeing any of our teachers returning or the ones that retired that are coming back under the policy?
You mean, are we seeing teachers returning as substitute teachers or?
Yes. Yes.
Well, there are some. Remember, when teachers retire, it takes a while for them to say, yes, I want to do that again. We're not seeing any greater increase or decrease in those numbers.
Okay. Very good. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Vote passes 4-0. Consent agenda item innovation and technology services. Item 18A. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Giles,
Second.
second by Ms. Grooms. Can you explain the grant, Rebecca?
Sure. This is our second round of funding for the homeless children. So that we get a 3-year grant. This is the second time that we get the 3-year grant. So the money is, we get that $73,000 and change for every 3 years. What we do with that money is we do Saturday schools that have kids come and we do wellness retreats with them and do parenting universities for their parents. And we have a lot of fun on those Saturdays and build the kids' skills.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? With that, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Vote passes 4-0. And finally, the legislative and policy discussion. We have first readings. Dr. Bowers, is there any outstanding first readings that you'd like to discuss?
No, these are two policies that we received language from CSBA to add these. These are new policies that encourage the district to give direction to these resources for the SRO as appropriate to meet the school district's needs. And then the other one is the integrated waste management to promote recycling.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? It appears not. We'll move on to comments from the board. Mr. TP.
Okay. Again, I want to thank all the parents and staff who provided input as we continue to look at safety measures during this time. I'm hoping that the county and so forth, they will revise their mask mandates. I was hoping we could send up a strong message from our district, encouraging them to do so. But they said in the beginning, when the curve was flattened, that they would make changes. And so I'm hoping they do that and we start to go back to a regular school setting. I am excited that kids are back in school and that so far we've had a very safe school environment for the students. So I'm looking forward to keeping that. And also for the staff, we've had very low incidents here in our district. So just encouraged and hoping we get back to even more freedoms for students and staff soon. Great enrollment report, and also want to congratulate Fulton Osbury for their recognition, and also welcome Tim to administration. So great board meeting, and that's it.
Thank you. Mrs. Grooms?
Wanted to say congratulations to our newest principal. And I was very glad that you could bring your family out with you tonight. A lot of work has gone into your preparation, obviously, for this important step. I'm very excited about the adoption of Smart Tag for our district. This process of making sure that our children are accounted for, that we know exactly where they are at all times, is part of our mandate from their doorstep to our school and the whole time they're with us until they return. Unfortunately, I was living in the San Joaquin Valley when an entire bus load was taken and buried. I will never forget the experience of what that felt like in the community. I'm glad that the software now has been updated enough so a child simply has to have their Smart Tag on their backpack with them as they go by the bus driver. And it's that simple. Then we know exactly where that child is. And we can answer any parent or teacher's question, where is that child? And I'm very grateful for that. When a child does not get off the bus, we know that too. And that's extremely important. In fact, the driver cannot check out unless every child has gotten off the bus. That is a very, very serious safety factor that we have in that program. So I'm very excited about it. I know there'll be hiccups along the way, and especially with our little ones, but they will. I think the high school district has worked out the bulk of the bugs of the project, and our kids will be safer through this process, and that's the most important thing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Giles.
Well, thank you for the meeting. I appreciate all of our speakers. Thanks to our new principal. I appreciate all of our speakers coming forward and trying to come together with us on a mask or a healthy child resolution, healthy staff resolution. I know Dr. Bowers worked hard to try to what's the word I'm looking for? Put one together for us that made everybody happy, but obviously politics gets in the way. We have lots of data presented to us that shows what support that the masks don't do, but I'm not seeing anything that's saying masks are really, I need some data saying that kids need to wear masks, and I'm not seeing that. I know what I've read. I know what I presented. Thanks for everybody that's trying. We did our best, but apparently it is what it is. So I'm going to keep fighting, and I appreciate my board members and the staff that are trying to help us to get some freedom for the kids and our staff. But it is. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Dr. Bowers.
Yes, I just want to also congratulate our newest principal, Mr. Hunter, and let him know that I really look forward to working with him in his new capacity. And also want to congratulate again Fulton and Osbury. And lastly, just want to say thank you to everyone for coming out this evening, and also make sure to invite everyone to stay for our community forum. Krista dressed up, so we want to make sure that everyone has a chance to see her, because she has some wonderful information to share on standards-based grading and report cards. And we'll be starting that community forum immediately following this board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to say our advertising and our staff, our administration, are keeping the attendance on the rise. We are doing a great job. We were worried at the beginning of the year, and I'm sure the year is still young, but it's good to see that there's been 194 student increase since last year. Thank you to the ABSTA for the great thing on the tags. I can only imagine the kids will feel a lot safer once that is fully instituted. Ms. Martinez, I understand your position. My daughter's a fifth grade teacher also. Although she hasn't seen bloody noses, she has had a COVID case in her classroom. So it is there. It is there. So we just hope that it will get fixed. And with that, Mr. Hunter, so happy for that you got the promotion. So happy. Dr. Wood, good to see you. Mr. Wood, good to see you. Oh, and Mrs. Wood, Dr. Wood and Mr. Wood. Thank you very much for your attendance. We really appreciate it. And we're going to ask for the adjournment at 7:17 in honor of Mr. Keith Giles' father, who delivered produce and owned the produce company that delivered produce to the Antelope Valley schools for 35 years. 35 years. He passed away, and we're very sorry to see him go. So at 7:18, did I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. TP. And I'll second it, Dwayne Wynn.
Actually, Mrs. Grooms had already gave you a second. You just didn't hear her.
Sorry, I didn't.
That's okay.
And all in favor? Say aye.
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 Aye. Vote passes 4-0. Thank you again for your attendance. And we're always available. If you have any questions, please direct them to the board members, or especially through Dr. Powers.
Thank you very much. That concludes our regularly scheduled board meeting, and we will now prepare to start our community forum as Krista approaches the podium. Thank you again to the audience.
We'll switch over during the yeah. All right.
Krista, are you ready?
I'm ready when you are.
Okay, we're going to forge ahead because we're getting a late start. So we are going to, if the board is ready, board, are you ready? Okay, fantastic. Then let's go ahead and do this. Thank you so much for your patience.
We good? Brandon, you good? Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. I did dress up. I ironed my shirt and curled my hair. So I'm very happy to be here. And thank you to everyone watching at home and participating this evening and sticking around for this huge initiative that we're about to kick off this evening. So we are going to be talking about a standards-based grading and reporting 3-year district plan. I am Krista Thompson. I'm the Lancaster School District Director of Curriculum and Instruction and Assessment, or the Director of CIA, best title in the planet. And I'm going to be presenting this evening in a little bit of an unconventional way. I have a partner presenter who is our consultant that we've hired to work with us for this initiative, but he could not be here this evening. He is actually based out of the East Coast in Indiana. So I asked him to record his portion of this evening's presentation, and we'll get to him in just a little bit. But just know that he works for Corwin, who we have contracted with before in the past, and Dave has actually worked with a couple of our schools in the past as well. So we'll get to more about him in just a little bit. Tonight we have some outcomes and intentions for everyone listening. It's going to be an information-packed evening. We've got about an hour's worth of information. And I also know that we've got a lot of people in our audience, staff members, parents, and families that are already familiar with standards-based grading and reporting. But we also have a lot of newcomers to the district, new teachers, new students, new families. So we want to ensure that everybody has the same consistent understanding of what we're doing moving forward. So our learning intentions for this evening are to first understand the purpose and benefit of standards-based grading and reporting, to understand our current reality and goals moving forward. We want everyone to know what the critical elements of our 3-year plan are and ways in which everyone, community, staff, students, parents, families can be involved and share their voice in this process as we move through the next 3 years. So to first define standards-based grading and reporting at a global level, kind of a big umbrella definition, is standards-based grading the purpose is to align our grading practices with content standards, really to ensure that we are accurately measuring learning progress and reporting on the student's proficiency in meeting those standards. A small note as we move forward, you'll see SBG kind of abbreviated in some of these slides as we move forward. That was just to save space on the slides. So it does stand for standards-based grading. All right, let's start with a little bit of a picture, if you will. If you were to take your car to the mechanic to get it inspected, and the mechanic came out and said, your car is a B+, we'd feel pretty good about that grade. That's a traditional grade. It takes into account all elements of what we have looked at, parts of the car, probably drive away feeling pretty decent about the grade that our car received. But it would really not be good if 200 miles down the road, our brakes give out. Rather, instead, have the mechanic come and shared with us, your engine is great, your battery's all right, your transmission is excellent, but your brakes are really in need of attention. You need to take some action on that right now or you're going to be in trouble. That would give us a lot more information to work with. The same applies to standards-based grading for students. Students have a lot of skills and concepts that they need to master by the end of the year, language arts and math, science, and social studies. When we average those grades together, it doesn't give us a very clear picture about what their strengths and weaknesses are or action that needs to be taken in specific skills. So we look at standards-based grading as a way to really narrow down what strengths and weaknesses we can focus on and give accurate reporting on progress towards meeting those goals. To define it more clearly, standards-based grading is to give a clear picture of a student's learning progress and a detailed view of their strengths and weaknesses, provides detailed and really key here, actionable insights, ways that we can take action. I also want to delineate the difference between a grading system and a reporting system. They kind of get muddled a little bit when we talk about grading, but really a grading system's purpose is to give feedback to students.
so that they can take charge of their own learning. Feedback is one of the most essential pieces of a student's learning progress, and you'll hear more about this from Dave a little bit later on. The reporting system is the way in which we share and communicate formally with parents and other institutions how students are progressing in their grading and in their learning. So why is it important? Big picture, it's to make sure that we have some easy benchmarks to judge whether or not students have mastered the skills and concepts they need to be successful in the next grade level. But there are a lot of benefits to this. And so I want to kind of highlight a few for students, families, parents, and teachers especially. So for students, the benefits of standards-based grading is that, one, it gives them some very clear learning targets. It gives them multiple opportunities to master skills and concepts to demonstrate proficiency. We all hate it when we're tested one time, we fail the test, and we don't get another chance to show that we can grow and master our skills. It also helps them monitor their own progress. When students know how they're doing and how they're progressing and what they're learning, it gives them ownership and motivation to continue the process. And more importantly, it gives students, when we give them student feedback, it helps build their motivation and self-esteem as well. For parents, that traditional grade, we all place value on our traditional grading system, the A through F system. But in a standards-based reporting system, there's more meaning in what parents are receiving in terms of what the students know and are able to do. It gives parents a little bit more direction in how to support students at home. And it helps them empower their own children with setting their own goals to work towards. For teachers, it's a really huge benefit for teachers because teachers know where students stand, what they need support with, how to address some of the challenges. And as teachers are working collaboratively in their grade level and across departments, it gives consistency to expectations, knowing how we can plan together, grade together, and know how to move forward together with consistency. We kind of need, before we move forward in an initiative, we need to know where we are and what has brought us to this point. Before we kind of go down this road, I want to share that we have established 3 priorities in the Lancaster School District: professional learning communities, or PLCs, positive behavior support and interventions. And the one through which this focus comes is standards-based instruction and learning, or SBI. We'll hear more about that in just a minute. So let's go through a little bit of a history lesson here very quickly. First of all, we have to give credit and honor to the teachers that worked very, very hard several years ago to create some standards-based report cards that are already in existence. So for the last 5 years, we have had a standards-based report card in TK through 5th grade, and they've done a great job. But 6th through 8th grade has relied on a traditional grading system as well. But they did a lot of work to produce these standards-based reports, but we've had some challenges. So as we implemented these standards-based report cards, one of the things that happened is we didn't do, and I'm going to own this part, we didn't do a very solid job of ensuring that our teachers had the support and training they needed to do some consistent grading. When I talk about the difference between grading and reporting, the rubber meets the road in the grading and what's happening with the students in the classroom. And we didn't do a very good job of ensuring teachers had the right support and training to do that. Now, don't get me wrong. Teachers have done an amazing job with that on their own, but it's not consistent. We haven't had alike conversations or collaborative conversations across the district about what that looks like. So that has created a mismatch in how we're grading in the classroom and how we're reporting at home. In addition, some other challenges have been that what we have built in terms of the report card has faced some technology challenges in our Power School gradebook that we need to address moving forward. Then comes the pandemic, which is really what has brought this to the surface in terms of a need for a change and updating the process. So as a result of the 1.5 years of distance learning and this pandemic and the challenges we are currently facing, we know that we've needed to focus on accelerating student learning through high priority standards. Essential, focused, targeted skills and concepts that will help help students and teachers focus in on what are the essential skills and concepts students need to know by the end of the year that they can help to accelerate as a result of the pandemic.
So we've established those high priority standards. We've worked with them. However, they do not match our current standards-based report cards. We noticed this and found this out to be a challenge at the beginning of last year when we started into the full-time distance learning. We met and had some committee meetings and some discussions. And it was decided that at that time, we went back to a traditional based A through F report card for simplicity's sake. There was just too much going on, too many challenges we were faced with distance learning to really tackle rebuilding a standards-based report card to match the standards that we were teaching. Well, we know that we need to tackle that. And so now that brings us to, what do we do about it now? So we understand and we know, and our priority is, we need to do some solid foundation building before we come up with a report card. We need to make sure that we have a reporting system that is equitable and that is built on solid, comprehensive training for not just teachers, but families, staff, and students as well. So where do we want to go? From here, we've got two goals. The first one is regarding our grading system. So the goal here is with our grading system beginning in the year 24-25, 3 years from now, all core subject teachers, core subjects being math, language arts, science, and history, in grades TK through 8, will use standards-based grading and assessment to provide feedback to students on progress towards mastery of the content standards. All staff will be trained in effective standards-based grading practices with ongoing support for new teachers. That's goal one. On the reporting system side, there will be a standards-based report card developed and piloted by committee with guidance from a professional standards-based consultant, Dave Nagel, based on research and evidence-based practices. The report card will communicate to families clear information about the skills a student has mastered or the areas where they need to be, where they need more support or practice, and will again be implemented by all core teachers, TK8 teachers in the year 24-25. Well, we have a 3-year plan to get there, and to acknowledge Mrs. Whipple's comment earlier about how everyone is exhausted right now. That is the absolute truth. And so this is why we are doing a 3-year plan, which we'll talk about kind of what that looks like. So the 3-year plan, shortly, I'll get into some more details here in just a minute, but just very quickly and as a broad overview, 3-year plan in the fall, we're going to introduce the plan and we're going to form a committee. We're introducing the plan tonight. Check. In the spring, we're going to do some standards-based grading training with the committee and some optional training with teachers, staff, and families and parents. Next year, year 2, 22-23, we are going to work with our committee to create a pilot report card. We will continue with training for all staff, family workshops and information about to families. Then in year 3, our committee is going to pilot the report card that they built in year 2. We will continue with training for all staff and again, families. And then finally, full implementation will take place fall of 2024. So to break it down a little bit better, year 1, this year is the learning year. The heart of this work is going to lie with our standards-based grading and reporting committee. So we're going to form this committee in the next couple weeks. And they will participate this year in 6 to 8 training workshops with Dave Nagel. These will be after school. We'll have 1 or 2 here in the fall, and then the rest will be in late spring. If possible, and depending on how we are sitting with teacher workload and whatnot, and if needed, we'll do some mini PD sessions again after school or collaboration opportunities that would be facilitated by CIA as needed and appropriate in the spring. In addition to the work that we do with the committee, again, as a learning year, we're going to offer some optional professional development to all staff. We'll do some informative workshops with parents and families as well, and give teachers various ways to engage in learning at their own pace this year. We want to make sure we're communicating the progress of the plan and what is happening. So check 1. We are communicating what our plan is this evening. We're going to introduce this plan at our district level advisory committees and continue to keep families and the board and community and staff updated throughout the year in various formats. Couple things going in this year that still need to be determined, and beside these two bullet points here, but two important things. One is we're going to need to determine what or if any policy modifications need to be made by the school board. We're also going to want to determine what is the minimum level of training that we want teachers and staff to participate in and have learned before full implementation in the year 24-25. So that'll be some decisions that will be made later this year. In year 2, this is kind of a practice year, a building year. Our committee is going to build the pilot report card using the learning from year 1 that they have engaged in. They're going to spend next year building a pilot report card. We're going to continue with training and even make some mandated ones through Pink Tuesdays and all district PD days next year to ensure we're getting everyone in the loop in terms of the trainings. Again, we're going to offer parent-family workshops and trainings and continue to communicate with staff, community, and board, of course, throughout the year in year 2. Year 3 is 23-24, and this is the meat year. So this is where it gets real. This is the application year for our standards-based committee, where they are going to actually pilot the report card that they built in year 2. They will pilot, the committee members will pilot with their own students in the classroom. We're going to, again, offer the trainings for our staff and ensure that we are getting everyone trained in the minimum level of training we want them to participate in. Again, offering some intensive workshops and trainings for parents and families. But this will also include what the new report card looks like, especially towards the end of year 3. We will also need to make sure that we're communicating very clearly, especially with the parents and families of the students of the pilot committee, because they will be using a different report card than the rest of the world, so to speak. So we want to make sure the parents of those students know what's happening. We're going to certify towards the end of the year that all the teachers have their basic level of training completed, and that we support them in any way that we need to get that done. And again, always annually update the board and community on what is happening with the progress of the plan. All right. So I'm going to turn this meeting over to Dave. He could not be here with us tonight. Like I shared, he's on East Coast time and for lots of reasons was not able to be here. So I asked him to do a short recording of what his role in this would be and to share some of the content and what we can look forward to in terms of his expertise and the content that he's going to be working with our committee members and other staff about. So he's got a 29-minute video here. We're going to pause about halfway through just to make sure to catch our breath and see if there's any questions. I do want to point out that if you have questions about what Dave is presenting, please capture them and write them down. I will be sharing any questions that Dave needs to answer with him so that he can return to you guys or community and answer those questions as well. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dave for the next chunk of time, and then I'll come back and finish up with a few closing remarks.
Do any of the board members have any questions at this point? Chris. Anything to share thus far?
I have some comments, but I think I'll wait till after.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good. Hope you have had a good day. I really appreciate the opportunity to come in and build upon what Chris has shared and has shared with you as a board and as an entity in Lancaster. My name is Dave Nagel, and I couldn't do this live. Would have been nice, but the time zones didn't work with my travel schedule, so we had kind of connected that I would create this recording. And so I told I had about 15 minutes. I'm trying not to go over that. It's probably going to be a lot of information, but you have access to this afterwards. And certainly we can connect between now and then. But from your role, I'm speaking specifically to the board and overseeing any type of initiative in a school district where you're serving the children, you're serving the constituents. I think there's two things that we should always ask, in my opinion, which is also based on research and evidence from your role, is help me understand. help me understand why we're engaging in this endeavor. What does it mean for our students? What's the evidence that backs it up? And what should we look for from success? And then how can I support, but also how can I add accountability? I think in all of our roles as leaders, whatever that is, we have to have a balance of support and accountability. And I think it actually starts opposite direction. We start with a boatload of accountability and then 2 boatloads of support. And so I want to kind of spend some time tonight getting you maybe familiar with some things as to why this is a quality initiative that you're engaging in. What my role as an external support will be also with all of us at Corwin, the entity that I'm kind of working through and under, because it's not just Dave Nagel, it's all of us. But I want to share with you a quote, because I do a lot of grading work. And this came from another district previously, and I just wanted you to take a look at what the summary was when they finally ended their meeting. I mean, when we see something like that and we're going to dive into a conversation around grading, could make us nervous. Well, I kind of told a little bit of a fib there because that wasn't recently. That was actually from 1933. And one of the points I make as we kind of get started into this conversation is one thing that we do in our schools, respectfully, that everybody has an opinion on, probably more than anything, is grades. We've all had grades done to us. And I've done a lot of work in grading because I believe passionately it's one of the areas that will either augment or derail everything we do. For example, if we believe that we want all of our students in Lancaster to learn from their mistakes, to value error as a path to learning, then we can't count every mistake in the grade book, can we? Now, notice what I said, every mistake. The point I'm making is that there's always these thoughts and beliefs about it. One of the things I do, and I'm not a researcher, I consider myself a practitioner. I've written several books, but I'm not an academic. I study the research, but that's never been my role. But one of the things I like to do is dig into the practical applications and practical solutions to practical problems that we're going to find, and not put rose-colored glasses on and think everything's going to be easy. So one of the things I like to do is to go into, whenever I'm kind of doing some research or seeing districts that are doing grading work or grading change work, to go and kind of read what are some of the social media posts or things in the media. And I got this one a couple of years ago that I pulled off the internet from Virginia Beach. And I'm going to get quiet again and let you just simply read what you see here on the screen. Now, I think it's obvious this person is very passionate. They care and they believe in what's doing right for children. But I just have a question, because this is a certified educator, and respectfully, those are questions. So they forgot punctuation. So is it possible to remember that punctuation saves lives? Yes, I believe in having levity, but I'm also trying to make a point. When we get into any type of conversation that we're going to have, we have to balance these two things: emotion and thought. And I'm only sharing that because as we go into this, there's going to be some folks that have emotion about it, and that's okay. But the thing about these two great gifts that we're given, you can't use emotion and thought at the same time. So how do we make sure we balance both and we allow the emotion to die down? And people have emotional thoughts about this, or emotional opinions and ideas, but we can't then think logically about how to move forward. So we have to go into it with a very intentional plan. And respectfully, out of any of the districts I've ever had the privilege to work with, I see probably as strong of a pre and potential post plan in place than any district I've ever actually worked with. What the plan is initially to bring folks along, to pilot, those kind of things. So I'm giving some honest accolades and compliments to Krista and the rest of the team that has done that. But a little bit about me, what my background is. I've been in education for 25 years. I did spend time, obviously, as a classroom teacher and administrator in a very large district in Indiana. Bigger doesn't mean better. But I've been in this role as a presenter consultant for about 20 years now. I'm currently a full-time employee with Corwin, and I've done most of my work in the last 7 to 8 years, exclusively with Corwin. I published several books, one that I kind of highlighted there that was focused specifically with a secondary lens, but it was really just what are good, effective teaching strategies that relate to grading. And I want to stress what I just said. Teaching strategies that relate to grading, that we don't get caught up into stanines and quartiles and all the mathematics of everything that we do around this topic of grading. Because one comment I always like to make, with rare exception, a lot of what we do in grading is subjective. So then the one nice thing about this plan we're talking about in Lancaster is to make sure we prevent people from having something that is subjective, and then we're going to lean on objectivity when we hit the equal sign on our calculator, as opposed to what does the learning really look like. So a couple other points, and please feel free throughout this time if you want to pause the recording and just digest and process with each other. But there's been some reasons for a lack of meaningful grading practices. One is traditions trump evidence. And we have some traditions in our schools that we have done for a long time that maybe there wasn't evidence around them, or in fact, there's evidence now that refutes what we're doing. It's very possible. And folks will fight very hard to hang on to that. And one of the comments I like to make is there is evidence now of practices that are just simply ineffective, that have been around for a long time. For example, round robin reading. Round robin reading is ineffective. It is proven to be detrimental. And I bet a lot of us listening to my voice were in classrooms where it was round robin reading. And you counted, I have five, I'm the fifth paragraph coming up. So I'll really get ready to read. And then after that, I'm going to turn my brain off. The point I'm making is we did round robin reading and all of us survived. I bet most of us who are listening to me right now remember laying in the back seat on the ledge of the car. Remember that? The back seat had a ledge. We didn't wear a seatbelt when we were kids, did we? Seatbelt laws were around in the 60s. We didn't start using them until maybe the late 80s and 90s, where it became an expectation you always do it. So the point I'm making, there's some traditions that we have to at least challenge. Does that make sense? Teachers, and rightfully so, have had a lot of things in their opinion, and they're not wrong, had things taken away from them. So there's a desire for some degree of, maybe power isn't the right word, but to control over their work environment. Most importantly, though, are those ones at the bottom, that there's an absence of collaboration around grading. We should collaborate on how we look at what type of feedback and what type of score, and also what type of instructional move should come from that student work together. And then we'll focus on the process, that you did it late, or you didn't do it with a friendly disposition. And so that in and of itself means that there's something wrong, or you didn't do it on my graphic organizer. But also from our perspective as leaders, there's some false assumptions. And the biggest one that I want to compliment where we are going is, this is the biggest false assumption, which in my opinion, you are attacking head on. It must involve teacher voice. Teachers cannot feel this is being done to them. Now, what they don't get to do is just say, I don't like it, so I'm not going to do that. That doesn't work either. But we can't just say, here's a new policy, I expect you to follow it, and I'm actually going to, no, it doesn't work. We know that. There's got to be focused time budgeted for folks to collaborate, to wrestle with. But also, here's another false assumption, that unless we have a plan to monitor and implement, so as a board, one of the biggest questions I would respectfully ask you to consider to your administrators that are going to be leading this work, how are you monitoring the level of implementation in your schools? Now, I said that intentionally, the level of implementation. I'm very cautious of the word fidelity, because fidelity can turn into rigidity. There has to be some authentic, practical applications. But I think the biggest way we address this, or with some of the things that I talk about with some core grading actions, teacher collaboration. There are specific meetings where we are collaborating and collaboratively scoring student work. And we're thinking about the tasks ahead of time. And if that is worth, for example, this amount of credit points, value towards that standard, however we're going to do it, well, then we might not even need that one, or that one would have to count a lot more or less. There's that conversation around that. And then the other nugget that I want to throw out is multiple opportunities for success, meaning stipulated second chances. Life is full of stipulated second chances. Whenever I hear somebody say, there's only one chance, you don't get to miss a deadline, I say, that's not true. I mean, imagine if you got to miss a deadline with your taxes and the IRS said too late, you don't get to pay it. I got tickets on your driver's license. What happens? You get points on your driver's license. How do you get them off? You pay money to take the online class. And after you do that, guess what? Your driver's license doesn't say you have to pull over when it rains. There's a stipulation. One of my standing jokes is, what do we call somebody who passes the bar exam on the 10th try? Some of you probably said a lawyer. I would have said my cousin Vinny. But all joking aside, the stipulation was I had to keep paying for the bar exam. I had to go back. There was a cost, a penalty, but it did not devalue your work, your degree, your license, etc. So a couple other points as we kind of dig in here. This is what grades cannot be. And a comment that I like to make, and I can't hear you in live, but I'm going to assume I could to some folks in the room. I want you to take your average with my finger student, pick a grade, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. And their parents say, when they come home with their report card, how did you get a C? What does the kid say? They're not lying. Because I know some of you just said, I don't know. They're not lying. They don't know. This process, respectfully, makes liars out of them in a good way. You should know exactly how and why what your grade will be. And so one of the things that I talk about whenever we're designing grading policy, which your work around this will do that, is would we all agree grades should be truthful? That for the most part, when we see a level of student work, that should equate to around that grade or that report. Yeah. Would we agree that they're reliable, and reliability goes across classrooms? And would we agree that there's a degree of fairness that should be in place, where I would say it is not fair if down the hall a student would do the exact same work for two different teachers and get different grades? That's not fair. So are they reliable enough across classrooms? Are they impartial? And this is where we have to examine the breakdown of grades with our level of gender and ethnicity and socioeconomic status and all those other factors. Are we seeing what we would expect? Are we making sure we're not letting that impartiality come into play? And finally, they're understandable. There's a level that says, because of that grade, I should know what the next steps are. And one of my comments is, as a parent, there's times when my son comes home with a grade and I don't know if I should take him to Sylvan Learning Center or take away the PlayStation. Because I don't know why the grade is what it is. This eliminates that. And I'm a big sports guy. And so what we talked about there is designing our mission of grades and created a football field. And you can run a lot of plays. You just got to stay in bounds. And so everything we're doing with this work has to align to, in my opinion, to those, which still allows a great degree of freedom, but also allows enough consistency that we are supporting each other from one grade level to the next with our work. Several other ideas that I think standards-based grading really addresses is this one. Now, I've been using this term and this metaphor long before the current pandemic, which it comes into play now, but let's go back to smallpox. We eradicated that. We can eradicate the average. The average is the least reliable number of a data set. And it should be, what is the level of student work today? And when students do better later in the semester, that's a sign of good teaching. And so let's make sure we eliminate the average, where in this scenario, and it's fictitious, but it is actually practical in a lot of classrooms, we have 4 students. We have Mitch, Kristen, Dave, and Phil. Mitch comes in on grade level, and that's where he stays the whole time. That actually wouldn't be a good thing, because that would mean Mitch didn't grow. There's Kristen, who was approximately a grade level behind and made some nice progress along the way. There's Dave, who intentionally, I use that term, really struggled when he came in, but actually made a lot of progress throughout the semester. And then there's Phil. And Phil is more than likely the normal student. They're up, they're down. But at the end of the day, all 4 of these students reach the same level at the end. But if we were to average their grades, it would look a lot different, wouldn't it? And it would be inaccurate from where they are today. And then lastly, just another concept that this work does is we accurately weigh the evidence. Certain evidence should count more. There are certain things you can do that really demonstrates understanding of those concepts and skills from the standard, and other tasks, lessons, assignments just don't as much. So how do we make sure we're weighing the right evidence? So not only are we giving the right feedback to students, more importantly, we're allowing the grade to drive our instructional responses. How we are responding with our tier 2 and tier 3 interventions should rely on the weighing of that evidence back to the grade, because this is showing me, yeah, you could read that, you could demonstrate inferences, but only with a text that's 3 or grade levels below. So it's good that you have that skill, but I can't look at the same as if you use a much more challenging text, just as an example. So, in fact, what I'd like to do now, I'm just going to respectfully ask that the group pause and take about 4 or 5 minutes to turn and just process what
the process for a second.
that I've shared before I do my next little piece. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to, but I am going to get quiet momentarily. I know that's a lot of information. I was just trying to, I don't want to use the word cram, but get a lot of information into this time frame. So I'm going to pause for a second, let you have a quick reflection. I'll come back and do my last piece but that way you have a chance to digest some of the things you heard and maybe generate some questions. Welcome back. So there are a couple of points I wanted to just highlight was what you see here with John Hattie, Doug Fisher, Nancy Fry, and John Almerode put together of what makes an assessment capable learner. And I'm going to get quiet and let you digest the 6 things that make an assessment capable learner on the screen from Hattie's visible learning work. And I would just respectfully ask, would anybody challenge that that's not what we want for all of our students and all of our own kids? I mean, they're really commonsensical when you read them. And one of the things we have to acknowledge is if we want these things, then we have to acknowledge that our behaviors as adults often drives how students react. For example, my wife would challenge me, and rightfully so. I lose my mind when my 3 children throw a fit if they don't get something because they want for nothing. And she'll go, that's the problem. You're losing your mind in front of them. I can't ask you to give me your best effort today if yesterday I said, as long as you hand in your homework, I'll give you 30 points, even if it's atrocious. Good point. So let's take those first couple statements. Know their current level of understanding, know where they're going, and competent to take on the challenge. This is a big piece of what I believe my role is going to be working with the teachers, because the only way students can know their current level of understanding and know where they're going is if there's a high degree of what we call teacher clarity. Now, as a review for some or just an introduction for many, what John Hattie has done is taken about 50 to 60 years of educational research and synthesized it and done meta-analyses upon meta-analyses to say, here's what the evidence says. And to keep it simple, the average effect of everything we do in schools is 0.4. 0.4 means about a year's growth in about a year's time. So you were to take a test today, a year from now, on average, you would grow about 0.4. And that's across the board for all. So it simplifies it to a certain level. The higher the effect size, the more the probability there is in creating powerful change. Just like the more, if you wear your seatbelt, no matter what, it drastically increases the chances you will survive that car ride. So 0.4 is the average. Teacher clarity comes in at 0.75. This doesn't mean we're going to guarantee that we'll grow 2 years in 1 year's time if we have teacher clarity in our classrooms. It doesn't guarantee it. Just like wearing my seatbelt doesn't guarantee that I will survive the car ride. If I'm texting and driving and not paying attention and being distracted, kind of negates that, but I still should wear my seatbelt. It is an element, but what we mean by teacher clarity is students know what they're learning, and the task is aligned to that to help both the student and the teacher describe what progress and performance looks like, which eventually equates to our grades. And let's face it, in life, we can always use more clarity. These are the things I do when I'm bored and I'm at an airport waiting for my flight. I was at a gate, this was about 5 years ago, and I was sitting there, it says the door is alarmed. So I took out a Post-it note and said, what's startle it? I think stuff like that's funny. And then I found this one about a year ago. I think that's an important point to know those are not the same truck. Again, trying to add a little bit of fun, but also hitting the point about how important clarity is. And the main element of clarity is what's called success criteria. Very often are I can statements that have to be aligned to the standard, that have to be aligned to our learning targets and our intentions. And some simple examples. And I love to pull out this example. This is where standards-based, standards reference grading comes to life, because we'll eventually equate those success criteria points into what really leads to where your grade is. Because can you identify the central idea? Identify 3 or 4 key details. Describe what we mean by those supporting details. Summarize. Write an objective summary. Now, any 6th grade teacher, which is where the standard comes from, or let's face it, that could have been anywhere from 5th to 10th or 11th, knows we're not going to do that just once. So are my students getting better at it? And then I would have to throw out the nugget. You can identify the central idea. You're struggling to do it with a grade level text. But this is where my feedback, my instructional elements, everything around what I'm going to grade should matter, not if you did it on time with a smile. And no one is saying that students now get to ignore deadlines. That is not at all what the message is. But the most important point is, as my instruction leading to more of my students being able to do that. And again, you're going to send, I'll send you the slide deck that I have here so you can come back to some of these. these are the things where the work really comes to life. And this is the intentional work that we have to make sure there's an alignment with our classroom teachers across the board that then equates to the grade and the reporting system. And I do like to highlight a couple other final examples with this. Even our youngest learners, they can do it. They can identify what they're learning. They can identify if they can write the story about the topic. Maybe we have to modify it, obviously, with a smiley face or a confused face, etc. But this is the type of clarity work that really brings learning to life, that allows students to become their own teachers. Here's a second grade example. And what I love about this very simplistic example is it aligns those elements of how I can use details in the beginning, middle, or end of the story with degrees of getting it. And now the student is owning it just as much as the teacher as to where they are in their learning. This is the element that brings any type of standards-based grading and reporting to life. Now, there's another element of the report card and reporting system that we'll talk about later, but that report card could be phenomenal. But in terms of what it looks like, how people read it, but if the work behind it isn't leading to it, to what is really driving the instruction and assessment and feedback in the classroom, then we've really missed the boat, because the most important thing we should be focusing on is what is going to increase the learning of all of our students and make them better learners. So I'd like to share just one other example. And again, these are examples. This is how the clarity work could come to life. And what you see here is you have on the left what the students were learning about: waves, matter, sounds. On the right are the I can statements. That's your success criteria. I can predict if a ball is thrown in the water, if we push back to shore or not, defining mechanical waves, etc. But it's the tasks that have to support that. And we want to make sure we separate the task from the criteria. We don't want our students saying, I'm reading at the core of it. I'm reading at the core of it because I need to be able to describe the features of a P wave and S wave. And again, this is just one formatting element, but this clarity work is what really brings the piece to life, because it allows students to set goals. And fascinating but very commonsensical research from Van Dirk and Kluger was the more students set their own goals, the more they seek an internal mechanism in their brains and their minds to seek negative feedback. Think about it. If you're doing a task that somebody else is making you do and you don't really want to do it, you just want it done. But if I'm doing a task that I really want to do well, I really want to paint this room, I want it to be awesome, and I ask my friend, what do you think? Yeah, I think it looks great. No. Tell me what you think. So the more we create powerful goal setting with our students, obviously related back to the criteria, obviously it's related back to the grade, but it's not because of the grade. It's because I'm trying to get better at solving polynomials and explaining my steps. That's my goal. It triggers the brain in the right direction. So the last thing I want to speak to of why I can't tell you how much I'm excited for the work and how I can't compliment the team so far and Kristen are putting the group together is collective efficacy. It's one of the highest influences Hattie has identified. It comes in at 1.39. Again, back to what I said earlier, the average effect is 0.4. So this has the potential to almost triple or quadruple learning. But there's some key elements that drive collective efficacy, and it is not just a rah-rah session. One of the biggest factors that drives collective efficacy are mastery learning experiences. We have to provide, which the plan that I've seen totally supports this over time, for teachers to practice. That's what we do in our profession. We practice teaching, but we don't call it that, do we? Doctors practice medicine, lawyers practice law. We practice teaching. It means we have to get good at it. We have to do trial and error, and we have to work with each other and learn. It's one of the biggest factors that drives efficacy is teachers getting a chance to do things really, really well and get well over time. Because I could take Opfer and Petter's statement here, and I love them, some fascinating researchers. Take teachers out and say human beings. If we just acquire the knowledge, nothing's going to change. So it can't just be we're using a different reporting system. That matters. That's an important element. And we'll have time to talk about that. And certainly that involves communicating with teachers and parents. There's no doubt that matters. As a former building administrator in a large district, that's a huge element of it. But we forget sometimes it's the teacher practices that are going to be the ultimate driver of the student learning. And I'll share with you two pieces of research as I finish here from Joyce and Showers. This one from 2002. thinking about how I shift my grading practices from a letter grade and a point system to align to my criteria and weight the value is not rocket science. It's not. But it sure as heck is mid-level complexity. It's a minimum of 20 hours. Minimum. For maybe one of the elements of it. Maybe there's 2 or 3 elements here. They need 10 to 15 times where as a PLC or as a collaborative team, they come back together and look at the student work and think about how that's working and what did we try and we move. We've got to provide our teachers time, which this plan that's designed over the next 3 to 4 years, it does that. Now, there's going to be some sleeve rolling up and elbow grease needed. We're going to have to do a lot of hard work, but at least there's a plan that is going to help support the teachers learning and learning from each other and learning from models in the schools from their colleagues. Because this was also Joyce and Shower's research that they've replicated several times. The percent of teachers that implement a new skill into practice. They learn the theory. They come and do a professional development session with me for a day to see it demonstrated in practice. They even get a little bit of feedback. It's not until it's job embedded. And job embedded coaching does not mean that there's a defined coach who's we are coaching each other. So we all have an agreement on what success criteria is as a 5th grade team, as a 9th grade English team, as a group of 9th and 10th grade biology teachers, which I was one. And we're on a regular basis supporting and challenging each other on what that looks like. And I want to use those 2 words again, support and challenge. Far too often, PLC collaborative teams, they live in the land of nice. I want to be nice. What do you guys think of my assessment? We think it looks great. Now, I think we could agree we should all be respectful. But I know we're wrapping up football season, at least in Indiana. We're about to start our state playoffs, so it's still in the middle of the season. Football coaches or the football coaching staff would be a great example of a PLC. And I would tell you, most football staffs at most high schools, their meetings are mostly not harmonious. They challenge each other. They might even say bad words. I'm not saying you need to say bad words, but nobody gets hurt or offended if somebody challenges your thought to a drill or what some feedback should be to the players if we don't think it's going to support the team moving forward because we all have a common goal. And that takes time within our teacher teams to support that. We should always be respectful at all costs, absolutely. But we also have to realize respect, as a matter of fact, Rick and Schneider's research, they defined respect in their model for teacher trust in telling the truth. Dave, I love you enough to tell you, I don't think that success criteria lines up with what we're looking for. I think we need to rethink it. We've got to build in that culture where that's welcomed. It doesn't mean anybody's challenging each other's competence. We're growing from each other and being practitioners. And I believe passionately we can build efficacy through this plan for other work that you're going to be doing as a large district. So I hope that wasn't too much, which it might have been, in a little bit of time. I know I talk kind of fast, but I wanted to support very respectfully the plan that is in place, hopefully a little bit of what my role would be. And obviously there's going to be time for us to meet in person and connect, but do not ever hesitate to reach out. If you have a thought, you have a question, anytime, I want to be your support.
All right. Thank you for hanging with me there for that chunk of time. If you'll stay with me for about 5-10 more minutes, we're going to bring this home with some details. I know that there's a lot of things that questions that are coming to mind, and we're going to try and answer a few of them and then talk about next steps. So thanks to Dave for sending that video. That was very nice of him to do that on short notice for us. So what is happening next? What happens after tonight's meeting? Well, I don't know because the mouse isn't working. There it is. All right. First of all, we need to talk about our current report cards. The plan is that we implement these new report cards 3 years from now, but what do we do in the interim for these next 3 years? We're going to continue to use traditional grading report cards to keep it simple. It's what everybody knows. It's what everybody understands. It's still legal and law-abiding standard of assessment. So, and a reporting system. But we're going to start to encourage our teachers, and many of our teachers are already there with standards-based grading, to continue to use as they become more comfortable with standards-based grading, applying standards-based grading in their classroom and communicating how that's looking with their parents. We can't just say, hey, teachers, do that. We want to support teachers through this process through optional PD, support, coaching, things like that. So that is on the horizon over the next 3 years. For you, school board members, very important piece here. First of all, we're going to keep you updated on an annual basis about how this is going, progress that we're making, challenges we're facing, decisions that we're making. But for you, we're going to need your support in revisiting some school board policies that may need to be modified depending on what's happening to ensure that we are aligning practice with policy. All right. And I know we have a lot of folks that are like, okay, tell me about this committee because this is a big deal. So I want to get into the weeds just a minute here with what this committee consists of and what this is going to look like. So we're going to have approximately 65 people, give or take, on this committee. That's big, but we want to make sure we have all voices needed on this team. So we're going to have representatives from all grade levels, all schools. It won't necessarily be all schools, all grade levels, but a mix and match of that. All schools, all subjects, and we must include special education, English language development teachers, members from our equity team, coaches, classified staff who support this initiative as well, secretaries, paras, aides, especially shout out to our ITS department. We need to have that technical side as a part of this process because they are supporting the work on the grade book and the reporting process in Power School. So they must understand the work we're doing on the front end in order for it to be successful on the back end. Obviously, parent and family representation will be on this committee. Site and district administrators and board members, we invite you at any time. You're welcome to join us for any of these meetings, but we may have some specific targeted trainings that we're going to invite you to that might inform policy. So just heads up for that. We want to consider this committee as our district ambassadors of standards-based grading and reporting. So we look to these members to be representatives to the colleagues, be able to answer questions, address concerns in their conversations. So they're going to kind of be our ambassadors moving forward. Participants will be selected through an application process. I imagine we'll probably have a lot of interested folks, so we may need to move to a lottery after the application. Going to work through those details. Here's the big thing. This is a 3-year commitment. So members of our committee need to be aware that we're going to ask them to be a member for 3 years. Now, life happens. We know that. But we want folks who are going to stick with us because we're going to take the learning from year 1, apply it to the building of the report card year 2, and apply that to the piloting of the report card year 3. So it's important that we have consistency in our group members. Obviously, this year is a challenging year to start this initiative. So we're gonna take this as we can. Again, it's a learning year, but all of our trainings and workshops right now are scheduled to be after school, obviously paid for classified and certificated members as well. But we're only looking to do the kickoff in December 3rd at 3:30 will be our first official kickoff meeting. We'll probably have one more meeting in December, but then we're going to move the rest to late spring, starting roughly late March. Early April. So those meetings are yet to be determined. Some other things that need to be addressed that we don't necessarily have all the answers for right now. And here's the thing, and I want to make this very clear. I am not going into this, and no superintendents or directors are going into this with knowing how this is going to turn out. We have a vision, but this, as Dave alluded to, this is a collaborative process with everybody's voice involved. So we have some things that we're going to need to determine as we move forward. But I want to make sure that we address a couple probably huge concerns right now with our audience. One is, especially for folks who have students who are going to be entering high school in the next few years, what does standards-based grading mean for a student who is going into high school? This is a big question on everybody's mind. How does it impact their transition into programs and classes? So we reached out to the high school district. Because we weren't going to start this initiative without support from the high school district and knowing that this was not going to have a negative impact on students. They unequivocally said it won't be a problem. Students will be placed in all programs, classes, honors, things like that, based on teacher recommendation and testing. And a standards-based report card is going to make it very clear what students are skilled in as well. So it will not have a negative impact on a student's transition to high school or later on down the road, what that looks like for college. I also want to point out here, it's not on the slide, but we have other districts in the Antelope Valley that have already undertaken the standards-based grading process. Westside has implemented standards-based grading in elementary. Palmdale is starting this initiative this year, and Keppel implemented standards-based grading many years ago. So we are not alone in this effort. Couple other things that are huge considerations, because when you pull the academics out of that traditional grade, you are still left with very important pieces like citizenship, study habits, life skills, things like that. That must be reported and monitored on. That's a huge part of how students learn and grow. So we need to determine, what is that going to look like on the report card? How is that reported? And how do we recognize students for high achievement? We have award ceremonies. We have recognition. So what does that look like with the standards-based report card? Just a tip. We still do that. We will absolutely still do that. That still happens. We're going to need to make sure, like I said earlier, that our gradebook is matching up with what we are doing. Gradebook and report card will match up with what we're doing in the classroom with standards-based grading. And we need to make some decisions about middle school, because this is a challenge. We have electives, we have non-core subjects. What does the report card for middle school look like if we're doing standards-based grading for core subjects? What does that look like for PE and electives and other things like that? So all questions to consider moving forward and discuss in our committees and with the community at large. Final piece, and I'm going to come in under an hour. The first step in getting input and feedback and taking a step forward to drive our process is getting input from our community and our staff. So we need your questions, we need your concerns, we need your comments. We have a questionnaire that is posted on the website right now. You can go there and it gives you an opportunity to ask as many questions as you want. Share your thoughts, share your concerns. We want to hear them. I promise you, eyes will be put on every response. We're going to collect the common questions and heavy-hitting concerns to create a frequently asked questions document to help inform the community and staff about some of the most common questions around this process. And then we are also going to use your input and thoughts and concerns to make sure that we are driving this process in the right direction. And we're taking your voice to do what is right by children and teachers. So this presentation will be posted on the website tomorrow. We're going to have it translated for our Spanish community as well. The questionnaire is in English and Spanish as well. We invite you to please, anytime, please go take that. You can get it to that questionnaire through this presentation or a direct link on the website. So ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the end. I want to thank you for sticking around for the last hour and hearing us out. I will take any questions, but if you want to put them on the questionnaire, that'd be great too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Krista. They're looking around, so I'm not sure if they have any questions or comments. Okay, there are a few.
When we're talking about parents and getting input from them and understanding of the difference of the grading system going forward, how do we take into account their educational levels as well?
That's a very good point. Well, and that's where we would be, and Dave in part, well, I'll finish a sentence in just a minute. Let me just start 15 thoughts at once. Dave is going to be working and facilitating some community forums and some community workshops with parents. So I think that will help feed the process. I think we need to differentiate, just like we do for children, to make sure that everybody has the same level of understanding and consistency and that their voice is heard no matter what their education level is or where they sit. Does that answer your question, Ms. Grims? No. Try one more time.
So, we do the pilot program. We roll it all out after 3 years. And we've had a lot of input from lots of different folks. But then the first report cards go out that are standard based. Where in the process do we talk about year 4 to explain to, because all of a sudden the parent's going to go, what does this mean? And they haven't been part of all of this. What's that process? Implementation into the community at large.
That is built into those workshops and community forums and newsletters and phone calls and information that goes out consistently over the next 3 years. But in year 3, we will have a picture of what that report card looks like. So in year 3, we're going to spend some significant time sharing with the community and parents at site levels, at district level, what that report card looks like, what it means, why it means, and address questions and concerns as we move along. We will have parent representatives on the committee as a voice in the process. But the main goal is to make sure that all of our students' families have the same message about what standard-based reporting means.
Okay, having spent a lot of time in the nonprofit world, there are a lot of parents who take anything less than a certain grade level as an actionable item against that student. We have foster youth who have no one really looking at that, not even a social worker. So there are lots of grades in between that. And so I want to make sure that we address that not every child is coming from a family.
100%. That's an absolutely valid point. And we need to take care to educate those families as well, the caretakers, the foster and homeless families as well.
So I think having a representation from the social work department who's engaged with a foster student population would be very beneficial.
I agree 100%. We're also going to have, it is our intention on the committee to involve a member of our PSA department. They don't know that yet, surprise. To ensure that we are addressing SEL pieces in the grading process, and specifically to address foster and homeless considerations. Thank you for that, Ms. Grimes.
And one of the things that we've learned in the last year and a half and continue to utilize is the fact that a lot of our families, hybrid works well. So putting things on video to train our families so that they may access it when it's convenient for them and they can reference it when they need to reference it and it's readily available. So not recognizing that not everyone can come to an orientation, not everyone can pick up the brochure. So what we have realized is that we are going to communicate multiple ways and make information available in multiple ways, including face-to-face support. So if someone does need some sit-down face-to-face, we will make sure to incorporate those opportunities. But we will also have videos available and different things. And while we're educating the parents, we're going to invest as much time educating the students so that they may also learn about this process, and not only the process, how they utilize this information and their grading and report cards to do better and understand where they need to be, where they're going, and how to get there. Mr. Teeping.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see is like a hybrid report card where you'd still have the main subjects with the letter grades, but then underneath that have maybe the 4 main standards for that subject with like check off where they can put met, has not met, or exceeding. So that way, I think parents mostly understand the traditional grading, but then if they need to see more detail, they can look at the standards too. But I would like to see the traditional grading still be a part of the report card.
I appreciate that, Mr. TP. One of the things to note is our 1st through 5th grade report card currently does have that overall score. So it's something to definitely be considered. And as we work through with the committee, we'll definitely keep that in mind for sure. Thank you.
And the other thing that we can also do, Krista, is we can share the meeting dates and times with the board members. So if anytime you would like to drop in and observe, you don't have to be a member of the committee to drop in and observe the process and have a better understanding of how we're progressing through this. So while Krista will be providing regular updates as to the progress, the opportunity to see and hear firsthand what is going on and what those conversations sound like and what the interest of the teachers and the parents are that we serve and that are key pieces of this, you would have an opportunity to do that. So we'll make sure that you have the information about when they're meeting and how you might be able to observe.
And I'd just like to state that December 3rd, we would definitely be there, but that is when the School Board Association meets in San Diego with all the other school board members from around the state. Otherwise, we would be there, I'm sure, for that one. But I want you to know that I back this 100%.
Thank you, Mrs. Grooms. And I will ensure all of our meetings will be recorded. I think that's my plan so that we can visit them. Everyone can revisit them later on. I apologize that you'll miss it. But any other questions?
No, Krista, thank you very much. The fact that we're looking at the grading aspect is fantastic. Because I know for years, even when I was in school, the grading was so, I don't know what you'd say, almost targeted. It wasn't, it was targeted by a teacher, and you didn't get the collaboration that they're asking for in this particular activity. So I think it'll be better if there's a lot more collaboration. Student, parents, teachers. I think that'll help all of the students and the district too. So I'm looking forward to it. I put December 3rd on my schedule, even though we will be in San Diego. I don't know if you'll have it on Zoom or not, but
It will be virtual. Absolutely. So it'll be live virtual, but we'll also record it as well.
Very good. Maybe we'll try to get up. I know there's so much going on.
It's going to be at dinner. You're going to be planning the future of the district. It's busy time.
But if it's recorded, we'll be there. We'll watch it for sure.
There will be lots of future opportunities, so not to worry. Any other comments or questions for Krista?
I'm sorry we made you stay so late to do this.
It was my pleasure.
A great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, it was our pleasure, actually.
Well, good work and a lot of it. So thank you so very much, Krista, for this information. And tell Dave we appreciated his video and all the information that he brought and added to the community forum this evening. With that, if there are no other questions, we are actually completed with our community forum. Would like to say thank you to all of the audience members here and all of the audience members out there virtually. And again, if you have any questions, we encourage you to go to our website, fill out the FAQ link in there, drop any questions or comments that you may have about this process in there, and we will make sure that we take that into consideration as we move forward. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
you.